I live just outside of Oakland, California. I was actually raised on the coast of North Carolina, so I'm a Southern girl at heart. I have my Master of Fine Arts in creative writing. I'm a published poet and recently published for the first time my first speculative short story. So excited about that. I am trained in poetry as a tool for wellness, and so I'll be talking a little bit about that later on in the presentation. And I'm the founder at Ancestral Futures, a liberatory literary arts for healing nonprofit. I'm also the co-chair for next year's 2026 World Fantasy Convention that will be held here in Oakland, California at the Downtown Marriott. So I just want to encourage folks to get in touch if they have any questions or interest in being involved in that. So with that said, I'll move into my presentation. And so today what I want to talk about is liberation, psychology, Afrofuturism, and speculative literary arts, specifically with the diasporic perspective on Black American Southern Gothic storytelling. As I said, I'm from North Carolina, and so this is, near and dear to my heart. And so the subtitle for today is just Passages and Portals for Liberation and Cultural Preservation. So today's talk is going to cover a very quick overview of liberation psychology per Fanon and the Afrofuturism lens, the rise in historical speculative storytelling as set in American Southern Gothic scenarios, contemporary examples across various media and genres, story-based approaches to collective healing, as well as cultural preservation, and then further reading and works cited. So to start off, I wanted to just very quickly hit some points. Fanon and liberation psychology. Oppression reshapes both external life and the inner psyche. Liberation requires reclaiming our history, our identity, and our agency and authority. Collective healing can happen through community practice, through story, and through ritual, starting, of course, at the individual level and then also moving outward, being held in community spaces. So, the main thing I wanted to look at today was how stories can be sites of psychological liberation, collective agency, as well as culture keeping. And again, just briefly, the Afrofuturism lens. Afrofuturism, as we know, explores diaspora through memory, through media, and through speculative futures. Afrofuturism is an evolving tradition, merging diaspora, cultures, and imaginative innovation. And what we're here to talk about today is how stories can function as bridges, bridging past memories with our present struggles, as well as imagining better futures. So let's just get into it here. The rise of Black Southern Gothic speculative fiction. There's been a surge recently in stories that are blending Southern history with folklore and the various speculative genres. And as you'll see on the right there in the graphic, historical speculative fiction may take the form of horror, it may take the form of folklore, Southern Gothic, or fantasy, or any hybridization of any of these. The audiences are responding as the demand for Black Southern Gothic speculative stories is increasing, as we'll see in the coming slides. Emerging platforms highlight these voices. Specifically, you'll see examples, magazines, and anthologies that I'll mention. And it's really an emerging movement. We're reclaiming our suppressed histories via the speculative literary arts, and that's my focus. So the main takeaway is magazines and anthologies, short story collections, and even textbooks, as you'll see in the examples, can be literary archives for cultural preservation. So our first example on the big screen, Sinners. This movie just came out this year. The storyline is set in 1932 in the Mississippi Delta. Very high level, twins open a juke joint. They face supernatural evil. Hopefully, a lot of you have already seen the movie. I know I've seen it. I think I'm on my fourth or fifth time seeing this movie now. And this movie is rooted in the blues. It's rooted in hoodoo. It's rooted in Southern Gothic traditions, As someone who grew up in the South, I can say I was moved to tears at different points in this movie. It resonated so strongly with me. I also, having knowledge of some Black Southern cultural traditions, not necessarily set in Mississippi, but even in North Carolina, I know I was looking like, did they do their research? Like, and I have to say, like, they nailed it. In the box office, the estimated opening weekend profits for this movie were around 48 million, and globally so far the movie has grossed over 366 million dollars. So there is indeed a deep resonance as we see with this data. So the critics are praising the movie as innovative, culturally rooted, and genre defying. And to get a bit of the backstory as to why Ryan Coogler made this movie, it comes out of a deeply personal connection to his own family history and a desire to explore themes of the Black experience in the Jim Crow South through supernatural lenses. The film was inspired by his late Uncle James, who was a Mississippi native who loved the blues and passed away while Ryan Coogler was still working on the movie Creed, which came out a few years ago. Sinners allowed him to delve into his own family roots, the cultural richness of blues music, and the historical context of race in America by combining his lifelong love of horror stories with the powerful narratives found in blues and the resilience of Black communities. So, just sort of level settings to talk about one of the biggest successes in recent contemporary times in terms of Black speculative storytelling. So, how this ties in the movie Sinners and liberation psychology. First off, it's restoring cultural memory with the juke joints, the blues, and having hoodoo center stage. Second point, agency through community, building cultural space despite all the hostile forces that were around them, and there were many. Third point, confronting psychological trauma, supernatural evil as a metaphor for the different forms of oppression. And lastly, it embodies Fanon's vision of healing and resistance through story. So I want to now, let me just do a time check. I want to give some examples. I'm first going to go through individual authors. I'm going to talk quickly about one of the contemporary Black Southern Gothic authors who is from Charleston, South Carolina. She's a novelist. And then I'm going to actually talk about speculative poetry. And I'll actually share one of my own poems that's been published and anthologized. So digging in here, I want to highlight one of the key authors working today, preserving culture. She's coming out of the Gullah Geechee tradition, born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. This is Eden Royce. Her first middle grade novel, Root Magic, won all the awards. And her follow-up book to that, Conjure Island, is very highly acclaimed as well. So she's drawing from her roots in the Gullah Geechee folklore, root work, and the conjure traditions. I know Eden personally, and she's told me the stories about her grandmother, sharing the recipes. I mean, everything from cooking to their funerary traditions and doing everything she can to ensure that the traditions that have been passed along her bloodline survive through her speculative storytelling. So she's using speculative horror elements to amplify rather than erase the culture. It's keeping alive ancestral memory and the regional traditions. And she just came out with her first adult novel this year, also set in Charleston, South Carolina. This is called Psycho Pump and Circumstance. So highly recommend that. And then moving along into speculative poetry, another avenue for and voice of liberation. Poetry can be a medium of cultural preservation and healing, just the same as prose and fiction or nonfiction stories can. So Black Southern poets are using Gothic and speculative imagery to give voice to our land, to our memories, to our histories, and also extends Fanon's idea of liberation to verse as archive and potential therapy as well. So looking at poetry as a form of liberation, poetry is compact. It can be very powerful storytelling in a very dense, short amount of space and time. And it also helps to ensure cultural survival. When we look specifically at echo psychology and echo poetry, and the example that I'm going to show you next, the land is actually speaking back, right? So this goes into ecological memory, the way that we have interacted with the land, the ways that our ancestors have interacted with the land. And it's nature-based and land honoring. So, as I said, I grew up on the coast of North Carolina. I grew up near the Great Dismal Swamp. And for those who aren't familiar, I'll give just a little bit of a deep dive on the next slide. But at a high level, this is basically an Afro-surreal echo poem that gives voice to the swamp as its own personified entity. I was inspired by Langston Hughes's poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. The themes here are land as living memory, refuge for enslaved Africans, ecological and spiritual witness of the land. And it's just an example of Black Southern Gothic and speculative poetry. So I'll read, there's a note here that I have. Close to where I grew up in North Carolina, a swamp runs along the western side of Highway 17, just north of Elizabeth City, and further across the Virginia border to the Chesapeake Bay. This swamp is called the Great Dismal. Original size estimates are around 1,400 square miles. The Great Dismal Swamp plays a huge role in the history of American slavery, as escaped slaves such as Nat Turner and Dred Scott sought their personal safety and liberation by hiding and living in swamps for extended periods of time. The style of this poem is in honor of Langston Hughes's lyrical rhyming poetry. The last line is directly inspired by Hughes's poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. So, this is Great Dismal Speaks. I'm saturated sponge of land, soaking up all where the waters seep. I'm lazy lift of alligator eyelid, slow to rouse from dark, dank sleep. I'm drawled out groan of lily pad protests as fat bullfrogs slowly leap. I'm squelch of soil under feet that never rush, always creep. I'm overflow of displaced sorrow, death visits often, always on the reap. I'm stretched wide from Carolina's Cape Fear up north to Virginia's Chesapeake. I'm your first stop, only chance, last resort to escape the master's keep. I've lost count of the bodies I hold, but each one housed a soul grown deep. So, as I mentioned, that poem had been anthologized. It's been published in a couple of different places, and folks that I know from that area have always said that, like, it resonates with them. It just sits well with their soul. So that makes me proud. I feel like I've maybe successfully captured a bit of the history and of the land over there. So next, keeping an eye on the time, I want to mention very quickly literary magazines. And again, the goal here is to imagine ways that literary magazines can sort of function as modern archives. So the first one, that I want to mention, of course, is FIYAH, the magazine of Black speculative fiction. It is the first and only magazine totally devoted to the Black speculative literary arts. And the next issue actually is going to feature only Black Southern Gothic stories and poems. So I think that's very telling. They're in this for the culture, they're in this to uplift and amplify diasporic voices. So the other magazine, this is a newer one and folks may not be familiar. So I want to make sure to get the word out about this. Tar Baby. You can find it at tarbaby.com. This is more of a broad arts and culture magazine, also inclusive of the speculative literary arts, but they also have visual arts and commentary and essays as well. This is actually co-founded by Ishmael Reed and Ford Morrison, who is Toni Morrison's son. So this is a quarterly. They talk art, they talk politics, Black culture, and their goal is to preserve cultural art and build on the established literary legacies set by Toni Morrison and Ishmael Reed. So please check that out if you haven't. And then anthologies and collections. Again, another way that we can look at archiving these stories. This first book here, this is actually a textbook. It was created as a K through 12 homeschool textbook with a STEAM curriculum, that STEM with the A for art. So STEM plus art, Conjuring Worlds. And this is one of the places you can find my poem, as well as a whole wide, just a plethora of other Afrofuturist and Afrosurreal works. There's poems, there's essays, there's short stories, and it comes with a full curriculum with exercises for students to complete. We have Nine Bar Blues, our own, BSAM's own Cherie Renee Thomas, her short story collection, Tananarive Dew, Ghost Summer Stories. I believe these are set in Florida, where her family hails from. We have John Jennings co-authored Shook, a Black horror anthology, and this is for the graphic novelists and the comics lovers. And then Spooklight, Southern Gothic Horror, another story collection that was edited by Eden Royce. So that was a very high level, very quick walkthrough. There's so many authors I did not have time to name, so many other platforms, but I just wanted to get this out there as a thought starter to get folks just really thinking and to hopefully start some conversations around how Black speculative literary arts, whether it's prose or poetry, can add through the Afrofuturist lens liberation psychology as well as a potential form of communal healing and cultural preservation. So I'm just going to go to the next slide. Key takeaways, memory as resistance, how our suppressed histories can be made to reemerge through speculative storytelling, culture as agency and authority through vernacular, folklore. Our art can preserve our various identities in diaspora, narrative as healing, collective therapy through speculative stories and poems, imagination as power, how Afrofuturism lenses open new futures, and lastly, community as infrastructure, how magazines and collections can sustain liberation. So I have here, I'm happy to share this deck. I have just a very short suggested reading list. If you're interested in these genres, here's some different Black Southern Gothic and other types of speculative work. So Ring Shout, P. Jelly Clark, Sorrowland, River Solomon. I won't take time to read through all these, but there's a lot more out there. This is, again, very high level. So in the interest of time, this is the works cited list that helped me put together this content. And then thank you for your time and attention. I feel like I went through that pretty quickly, but that's all I got for today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for providing us with all of that incredible information. I know me personally, selfishly, I want to hear more about this convention that you mentioned because you gave us a sneak peek, but I'd love to hear some more about that. And if any other folks have other questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask them.
Hello. Hi, it's Khadija here. I couldn't find the hand thing, sorry. On there. Yeah, I want to hear more about the convention. But also, yeah, I know that they're gonna show the recorded papers and everything, but the reading list, if you can share that again, the reading list, it would be great. I think your whole I will touch base with you because I'm really an anthologist as well. I love anthologies. And I just believe in terms of cultural and social history of our times, they are really, really important. So really thank you for really, I know you zoomed along, but it was great. The information was really rich and stuff I can share with friends who want to link with the Gullah community as well. So that was a particularly important one about Erin Royce. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Khadija. Yes, let's please connect. I know you're doing amazing work with the British Black speculative fiction. So
Yeah.
we definitely have to connect. And again, this was just from my growing up on the coast of North Carolina, so Black Southern speculative. So, that's just a little corner, just a little
Mm.
taste. So
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you. Thank you for
And the
your time.
poetry too, that I'm really into that. So yeah,
Great.
lots to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't really have a question, just something that really resonated with me is I lived in Oakland from 1979 to 2019, and it's really heartening to see, Oakland in the house in a certain way, with and
Thank you.
The great Ishmael Reed too is a resident of Oakland. So
That's
yeah,
right. Thank you.
yeah. Excellent presentation. I loved it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And apologies for my confusion. I don't know why on my end it said 11:30, but I think hopefully it all works out.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thank you for providing your presentation. That was awesome. And the Bay Area never disappoints, I will say. In this Afrofuturist space, the Bay Area always comes through. I gotta
That's
give
right.
you credit there. I fear. I'm an East Coaster, so I'm a hater by nature, but okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carr. I appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, for your time and attention.
Yeah.
Thank
Uh,
you.
I'd want to hear what you think of some of the speculative stuff that Amiri Baraka did, which seems to be in the same kind of genre that you were talking about. He
Mhm.
had, doggone it, what was the name of this book? Tales was the original one, but he did a second one oh, Tales of the Out and Gone. Yeah.
I'm actually not familiar with that, so I'll look at that and we'll look up on that because I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, you'll love that. Oh, you're gonna love
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Have you heard of the Legendborn series?
Oh, yes. Haven't
I was
read it
about to
yet,
say,
but it's on my list. That's on the reading list.
I'm on a book club and they read it a few months ago. I was just scrolling through the app to see what month we read it, and I read most of it. It's a really hefty book, so it's a read, but it's a really good book. Like it's super dope, and obviously inspired by UNT Chapel Hill. So you know how that goes.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I just threw this in the chat, but it was just saying that, during the pandemic, we did a lot of our classes. I teach performing arts high school and arts high school, and we were doing a lot of Zoom stuff during the pandemic. And the literary arts program, a lot of the African American students who were part of that, they presented their short readings, and it was amazing. There was so much that was horror. And
Yeah.
so again, this is again kind of connecting to what you were talking about, but there is this, literary again. Afrofuturism in general, I think, is a cross-disciplinary movement. It makes me think a lot of the Harlem Renaissance. But I was really pleased to see such young writers already like digging in, right? Because I felt like I've been waiting from the time I've been watching horror movies for African Americans to really dig in on horror because, you
Yes.
know, I think Paul Mooney says that we watch every horror movie. We watch them all. We know them all. So I think that like bringing that to the forefront and then engaging African American folklore and horror ghost stories, it's right there. I think it's already right there. Bitter Root is a comic that plays with that very well.
That's right.
They play with again a lot of like traditional African roots. What are the evil kind of things that come up? So engaging that spiritual world, but in this fantastic comic book genre way, right?
Right. And you're reminding me, speaking of Oakland, and yesterday Dr. Jasmine Wade was presenting, and she's in Sacramento now, but she was living in Oakland, and she actually wrote a short story about the over policing in Oakland. And I don't know if this came up. I meant to mention it yesterday and forgot. But in her short story, what happens is there is a black youth walking down the streets in Oakland, victim of extrajudicial murder. And this woman comes upon him and she's holding him as he's dying. She happens to be a vampire. And so she has a choice. And she had been fighting the urge. She had sworn off humans. She was living off
That's wow.
rodents,
That's
but
great.
she made the choice, right?
That's really
And so
good.
I need Dr. Jasmine Wade to come
I
back
got to
and
check that out.
talk
That's
about
really
that.
good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to make that
She
connection because that
flips
was
the trope. So yeah, it's interesting the things that we can do with speculative and with horror in particular.
for sure. It could move into some great places. We'll have to talk later. I got some.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to cut into the time. You're up.
We're still right on schedule, actually, so no worries.